Hi guys, so the anti-protest, anti-civil liberties bill passed the second reading with a majority of 96 or something like that. This is a dark time for British democracy. Now you're going to hear a powerful speech against this crime bill. This is Maria Eagle, and I want to say thanks to Anonymous for sending me this link. This is necessary. We need voices in Parliament to stand up to Boris Johnson and his dictatorship light. Basically, that's what Boris Johnson is trying to create, because the powers that Parliament have are ebbing away. But we'll get to that later on in the video. So I want to show you this powerful speech by Maria Eagle, a Labour MP, against the crime bill.
Eagle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This 300-page incoherent mishmash of a bill contains some truly odious measures, and I've got time to deal only with one of them, the dangerous and unjustifiable crackdown on the freedom to protest in clauses 54 to 60. These clauses alone are enough for me to vote against the second reading of this bill tonight, despite it containing some measures that are good. This populist government has swiftly developed a penchant for authoritarianism, born of its approach to getting the vast amount of Brexit legislation necessary through Parliament. It's got into the habit of writing framework bills with extensive Henry VIII powers, leaving vast scope for ministers to change primary legislation by personal fiat.
Okay, so what she's talking about here, of course, is how the Home Secretary will be able to change rules. And I get to that in a moment. So this is from the UK government's website, the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill 2021. So it says here in one of the sections, the Home Secretary will have the power through secondary legislation to define and give examples of serious disruption to the life of the community and serious disruption to the activities of an organisation which are carried out in the vicinity of the procession, assembly or one-person protest. Just to highlight one thing here, one-person protest. So they want to cancel, an individual protesting against the government. They want to stop that. What power does an individual, unless they're focusing on one particular individual who has been making his voice heard against Brexit, maybe this legislation was to clamp down on him. But you can see here through secondary legislation, so the government can pass secondary legislation that doesn't need actually Parliament to scrutinise it. So the Home Secretary is basically making up laws and not having them scrutinised by Parliament itself. It goes on to say the legislation making powers will clarify ambiguous cases where, if they arise, it would not be clear whether the threshold for the use of the powers have been reached. This will enable the police to make use of their powers with the confidence that they are doing so legally. Let's get back to the speech.
Without adequate parliamentary scrutiny. This trend has been made worse by the necessity to legislate swiftly for public health reasons because of COVID, again with no scrutiny ahead of laws being brought into force. The coronavirus crisis has led to a draconian removal of basic liberties, necessary temporarily for health reasons, but not for a minute to be thought of as desirable. Now the government wants to make this emergency way of doing things the norm to enable police officers to have far too much power effectively to silence any protest. So we have a government that attacks judges who decide cases in ways they don't approve of. We have some law officers who won't defend the independence of the judiciary. We have a government that legislates to enable it to break a treaty it's itself only just signed. Ministers, including the Home Secretary, who break the ministerial code with impunity, while senior civil servants they disagree with are hounded out of their jobs. And they now want to take the power to ban demonstrations or vigils if they're too noisy, literally silencing any protest they do not like. This legislation allows for convictions for breach of conditions police have imposed, even where the person on trial has no knowledge of what that condition was. It increases the punishment for such a breach from 12 weeks to 51 weeks in prison. It seems to me, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Home Secretary has hijacked what was a worthy enough sentencing bill to insert her divisive and polarising measures on protests. The original timetable for the bill gave the game away. It was due to be completed in time for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections in May. This is being done to enable the government to claim that its political opponents are not supporting the police enough. Indeed, we've already heard speeches from some government backbenchers claiming just that. There's been no real focus on how the law should be changed for the good of society. We've just seen how much it fails to meet the needs of women who just want to be safe, for example. Yet this bill just doesn't tackle any of those issues. Clauses 54 to 60 of the bill are intended to destroy the fundamental rights of citizens in our democracy to protest for some cheap headlines ahead of an election. It's draconian, it's undesirable, and the government should not get away with enacting it.
I agree 100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. And we've seen this since Brexit. I think Brexit was the catalyst behind all of this. The government realized that they were able to lie to the public and get away with it. They were able to lie to Parliament and get away with it. They were able to push through legislation and not allow Parliament to scrutinise it and get away with it. Boris Johnson keeps pushing the envelope. The Tories keep pushing the limits. And there's no pushback. The pushback seems to be coming from the public, but that's not enough. It has to come from Parliament itself as well. We've seen it with, let's say, Brexit, for example. Let's start with Brexit. How the withdrawal agreement bill pushed through Parliament, and Tory MPs, including Ian Duncan Smith, voted for legislation to stop MPs from scrutinising the withdrawal agreement bill. And then after, he complained about not being able to read the withdrawal agreement bill and saying that the withdrawal agreement should be scrapped or whatever. Then through the pandemic, of course, we had the same situation where there wasn't time to allow bills to be scrutinised. The government just had to be given the power to act by decree, basically. And then, of course, with getting Brexit done, the same situation, and we're having this same scenario is playing itself out again. The government are not being held to account. Boris Johnson doesn't answer questions. He doesn't respond to the demands of the opposition. The opposition have no power. The Speaker of the House has no power, and I've raised this on numerous occasions. What is the point of Parliament if it can't scrutinise the government? What is the point in having a Speaker of the House if he can't call out errors or mistakes and even lies? Boris Johnson has been asked to come back to Parliament to correct his mistakes, to apologise for his lies, and he doesn't. It's a sham. It's a joke. What is the point of all of it? What is the point of Parliament if the government are able to push through legislation that disallow Parliament's ability to scrutinise? And we saw it with just after Brexit, where Liz Truss was travelling across the world, signing new trade deals, quote unquote, and the government passed legislation to stop Parliament from scrutinising these trade deals. You know, the media, the right-wing, pro-Tory, pro-Brexit media, will continue to say, look at all these great trade deals we're signing with all these countries around the world. But we don't want Parliament to scrutinise it. We don't want Parliament to actually see what's inside the trade deal. So the trade deal is so good, we don't want anyone to look and read it and understand it. What does that tell you about a government? If a government has to pass legislation to stop Parliament from actually understanding what's in it, even though they have an 80-seat majority, what does that tell you about the Conservative Party? What does that tell you about Boris Johnson? And what does it tell you about democracy in the UK at the moment? You can't blame Scotland for wanting to become independent. Just look at Westminster. It's getting worse by the day. I really hope what's going to come out of this is a progressive alliance. The opposition parties form an alliance just to get the Tories out. Get them out of office and then introduce proportional representation and end this disaster. There will be public inquiries to deal with the pandemic. We will see what will happen with those. But at the moment, the first course of action must be to get the Conservatives out of power. I don't know how that's going to work, but the parties need to come together and work something out. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?